Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Ad Nastana. It's a pleasure to be back with you here on Points of Light Radio. And carrying on with this wonderful journey that we embarked on over 2 years ago of light and knowledge. Every now and then, I get to cover an organization here on Points of Light Radio that not only you have never heard of, but also I have never heard of, right? And my guest today is going to do just that. You may recall my guest from the October 6, 2022 segment of Points of Light Radio, where he shed some light on the ancient mystic order of Samaritans. It's been a while since we saw this gentleman, and he recently reached out to me about another organization that he's joined called the Braxian Club. Right? Oh, I'm even saying that. Well, just to give you some background on this organization, I can't. I've never heard of the Braxian Club. And who better to introduce you to the Braxian Club and shed light on it than my guest today. So we'll be continuing our journey by fellowshipping with Wilbert Lemuel and allowing him to shed light on the Braxian Club. So let's just go do that now, shall we? But, as I always ask you, are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? Then you just trim your lamp and follow me. Mr. Lemieux, welcome to Points of Light Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you are a member of the Braxian Club.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you tell my listeners and viewers about yourself?
Well, my name is Wilbert Lemuel, or just Will. I am a bit of a fraternalist like my brother Stan here. In seeking more light, I've gone through the degrees in Freemasonry through Prince Hall affiliated lodge in North Carolina. I am also a member of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows here in New Jersey, where I live now. I've also joined the Benevolent Protective Order of Elks.
Wow.
And the Knights of Pythias, and most recently the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. And I'm sure I maybe have left out one or two, but I'm mostly active now in the Independent Order of Odd Fellows, and financially active in Freemasonry with my home lodge back in North Carolina, and most recently in the last approaching a year working with another brother to see what we can do about reviving and regrouping the Braxian Club, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight.
Now, how long have you been a member of the Braxian Club?
Interesting enough, I joined the Braxian Club my second semester freshman year of college. So that would have been 2008, the spring of 2008. And that was back in North Carolina. I really didn't get much of an experience with all the Braxian Club, what was about at that time and what it had been about in the past, because unfortunately it was a small group. It was the second semester, and the person who invited me to join and was the leader, was the presiding officer of the club at the time. He was graduating. So it was one of those situations where, you know, we've seen in some other organizations where in this case, he didn't die, but that one member that holds it together is no longer around, so it kind of falls apart. Pretty much when we came back from the summer, I heard nothing else about meeting with the club or anything. So I never really got much of an experience with the club. That was my initial introduction. So,
Now tell us about the Braxian Club. What's its purpose? What exactly does it do?
well, the original purpose of the Braxian Club, it was founded in April of 1897 by young men, seven in total. Initial vision was by two men who were friends from college. They had graduated, and they were looking for a space where they could not just socialize together, but as young growing professionals, meet with other like-minded men and share ideas and information. So initially, it was formed to be an outlet for forward-thinking men who wanted to the focus being self-improvement. They would meet together and share knowledge and resources. That was the main purpose of it, to share knowledge and resources meant to improve or contribute to the interest of other members, but also to have that social component where you're able to let your hair down and trust the men that you're with to not let you go too far or do anything that would maybe ruin your reputation as a young professional at that time. So it was really a twofold thing. It was a balance of business and pleasure, and they were very, very secretive back then. And what we know from the documents that we were able to still have is that it was small by design. It was never meant to be a large organization at all. It was meant to be these small, intimate groups of men that could trust one another, and they kept to themselves for the most part. Like, they were never an organization that publicized anything, which worked for them back then. But it ended up in the long run, as some brother from an Oddfellow Lodge would say, they kind of secret society themselves to death because no one's heard of the Braxian Club because that was the way it was meant to be at a certain point. So now we're
You're
finding
an
ourselves.
odd fellow and you're a Mason. It was never designed to rival either of those two organizations. Never designed to be that big. So.
Not at all. Completely different. It's really if you, when we're looking at the records, it was always seems to be more of like one of those classic gentlemen's clubs, like members only club.
Ah,
They just had a fraternal twist to it. It wasn't just simply paying your dues and coming to secret location for drinks and cigars, but they had a structured meeting ritual, things like that. Some, like the Odd Fellows or any other fraternal order,
okay.
but in the weirdest way, it was also this other side where they were very much a social, intimate, closed circle of men for the purpose of fellowshipping. It wasn't a thing of getting members or having rivalry with any other order, because I would think of it more as rather than a fraternal order, if it makes sense, say a fraternal society. It's a society of men that has a fraternal element to it, but like it gives me more of a feeling of a members only gentlemen's club basically, but they do have a fraternal tradition attached to it.
So, what are the qualifications to join then? So, from what you're saying, you don't admit women. How old do you
Now,
have to be, and what do you have to believe in, shall we say?
you have to be 21 years of age. You have to be employed, or retired, or a full-time student, um, a college student. I should say that, a full-time college student. It's not a college organization. It never was, but just taking into consideration the age of men, like I was in college at the time, and I did not, I was not employed. I was just a full-time student. Um, there's no restriction or no requirement, I should say, which is another thing that separates the Braxian Club from a lot of fraternal orders. There's no requirement of professing a belief in a supreme being or anything like that. The main thing that it requires is that, similar to some organizations, that you be man of good moral character, that you be forward thinking. And what they mean when they say forward thinking, it's a man who your actions shows that you're someone who's thinking about tomorrow, whether it be through your professional endeavors or how you carry yourself. You're planning for the future, so for something beyond today. Those are really the only requirements. However, it is invitation only. So it's nothing that you can just
Cool.
apply for. You have to be invited, which was one of the requirements from originally when it was founded. Only difference now with because we're trying to keep the integrity of a lot of the old traditions. Anyone can express interest in the Braxian Club, so it doesn't prohibit anyone from showing interest, but there still has to be an invitation in order to, be brought in and initiated into the club.
Sponsored.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
To be sponsored in, yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a degree system in the Braxian Club?
There's not a degree system, and from the records that we have, there never was any degree system. Matter of fact, what we have is that the ritual has had very little changes to it since it was originally written by our brothers Edward Saxon Stanway and Burgess Johnson. They were the two primary people who wrote the original ritual, and very little from what we've read, very little has ever changed about the ritual, and that's only been one ritual. So that and it's not referred to as a degree; it's just the ritual, and there is a lot of symbolism and things in it, like you find in other rituals, but no degree system, just that one initiation ritual.
And of course, an encouragement to develop yourself afterwards.
Of course, yeah. I think that's an element that lasts in there, but they added the extra thing in there of not just self development. One thing that I find significant in it, which I don't think is saying too much, is that it really encourages not only your own development, but it's like a mutual development or a mutual improvement. So it's focusing on yourself, but also taking into consideration and working for the interests of your other brothers. So sharing information and resources that may benefit them in whatever their endeavors are that may be of no use to you directly, but it can help advance another brother in his way.
Now, tell us about your Brax. Does your Braxian clubs have names or numbers to them, like shall we say Masonic lodges?
They do actually. Interesting enough with the Braxian Club, the names are very how can I put this? They're very interesting. The names and how the names are given, are not given, but how the names are chosen, I should say.
Hmm.
So I don't think I can really say how, but you'll if you ever hear the name of
Oh,
a Braxian Club, it's very interesting. I'll say there's a formula to how names are chosen, and I have no idea where it came from. It's just it's just been there for as long as we can tell. Definitely after the founding of the first club, every other club had a very unique name. So you have that name that your first elected or chosen presiding officer, which we call the magister. They choose the name, and then the number is given based on sequential order of the other clubs that were established. And there has been at least once in the history that we have where there's been a club that's had the same number, and that's just because of the at the time that they were putting in their request, they were both established around the same day or same time, so they were both accepted with that number. So they had different names, but a duplicate number shows up at least twice in the lineage that we have.
well, now what is the makeup of your club so far? Like, what are you finding? Old, young? Who's taking an interest?
It's young, mostly younger men, and when I say younger, I mean under 40. But there are definitely some men who are between 40 and early 50s who are who are who are interested and will be coming in. Right now, my because I'm in New Jersey, We're mostly based in, or we're mostly focused in the Atlantic County, between Atlantic County and Gloucester County, which is in the south part of the state. So, we'll be extending some invitations to some other men there, some people who were previously affiliated in other places, at least two other places, who have heard our plans of regrouping, and so now it's starting to happen in at least two other places. But the main work that we're trying to do is working on, once everyone who's interested initially gets everything established and previous members come back, now that things are being reopened again, that we focus hard on the visibility piece while maintaining the integrity of the organization. So social media to some extent, but definitely a website, because we don't want it to be a thing where we come together but it dies out because no one knows who you are. And people are very skeptical, for good reasons, nowadays about joining anything that's too secretive, or nothing, if they can't find any information about it, because
Yeah.
there's always the fear of being tricked into joining a cult, which this is not. So
But now, where do you meet, or where are you planning to meet?
we'll be meeting initially in just outside of Atlantic City, in Ventnor City. So it's on the southern coast of the state. We'll be meeting in a private club, so that we'll have access to. So we're meeting there initially. Not sure if that will change, but that's been the chosen location for now. There will be some virtual meetings as far as planning meetings go, but any kind of formal business meeting will have to be in person, and of course with the opening and closing ritual or ceremony, which they do have in the Braxian Club. So
Now, what do you feel it's done for you so far, and what could it do for those thinking of joining?
I think it could have done so much more for me had I had the full experience when I was younger. When I initially was invited to join, because I'd forgotten all about it until years later, and when it was, you know, just happened to kind of pop up as things tend to do. But I guess it was just the right time. But one thing I've gotten from it is just the importance of men having a space. I'll say progressive men having a space where they can not only come together to share their knowledge and experience for the purpose of advancing each other, but also just to have that safe space where they can really relax with other men who have things to lose. I'll say that. So we're not,
Yeah.
we're not out here being careless or reckless. We're holding each other accountable, but we're in a safe environment where, what happens here stays here, and what happens here will be within reason, because we have goals, we have aspirations. So I think that's been the main thing.
Mr. Lemieux, I appreciate your time today, and all the best to you and the Braxian Club.
Yep, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me, and best of luck. Continue with the show. Love it.
That was Wilbert Lemuel, brothers and sisters, shedding light on the Braxian Club. Wasn't it wonderful having him back here again? And it was especially wonderful having him introduce us to the Braxian Club. Now, oftentimes, when you see me introducing you to a defunct fraternal order, you'll hear me ask you, do you feel this is an organization worth reviving? Well, what I love about what is about Wilbert Lemuel is what he's doing here. He has taken an organization that had largely faded out, and he's bringing them back. And I love that, right? Preserving that history of that wonderful organization. This does sound like an organization with some history behind it, right? And I think we'll definitely have to revisit the Braxian Club. I'm going to try to catch up with them down the line and see how this is going with them, and keep this organization within the public consciousness. But I believe that's all I have time for today. It is smoking hot here in my office. I do not have air conditioning. But before I go, I want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. My Twitter handle is at PO Light Radio. You can also see the link to my Spotify channel in my Points of Light Radio store. Brothers and sisters, until we meet again, just step into the light.